What is going on, everybody? It is 219 Football here, coming back at you guys with another video. And in today's video, we are going to be going over my top 10 quarterbacks for the 2025 NFL Draft. Overall, I know you've heard that this quarterback class is definitely not as good as years past, and I even made a video on that before, but these are my final top 10 rankings. And yeah, it's not as good as years past, but I do think that there is some value in the later rounds, some possible breakout starters, or just I think there's some really good backups as well. And I do think there are some high-end starters, or maybe just one at the top of the draft, but we'll get into that later. Before we get into the rankings, be sure to like and subscribe for more NFL content. The Combine's coming up soon, so we're going to have positional rankings for every single position in the draft. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of draft coverage, prospect videos, rankings, all that stuff, mock drafts, so you won't want to miss it. So like and subscribe for that. And let's get into my first quarterback, which is actually going to be not my number 10, but an honorable mention at number 11, and that's going to be Curtis Rourke out of Indiana. So Curtis Rourke is an older prospect. He has really prototypical size, 6'5", 223, really good. So the traits are there in terms of size, but in terms of arm strength, not really. His arm really just did not wow me, and he couldn't really make a ton of throws downfield, especially when he wasn't able to get his feet set. It was just really rough in terms of arm strength. I think you'd think someone for 6'5", normally they have like a cannon of an arm, someone like Carson Strong, but Curtis Rourke just doesn't really have that arm strength that really entices me with the size. And so moving on to accuracy, underneath and medium, he's really accurate. He can hit throws really well as long as his feet are set. But again, like I said, the deep accuracy kind of tapers off a bit, and when he's on the run or under pressure, it also really suffers. So that's what gets him that B- overall accuracy grade. But underneath, he can hit the throws. So yeah, kind of iffy on the accuracy, but he has a good floor with the underneath. It's just the deep stuff, and when he's on the run, that I really don't love. And then also, so decision making, processing, all that stuff, he's kind of stuck on one read most plays. He gets the ball out pretty fast. He doesn't hold on to the ball too often, and he makes decent decisions, but just he rarely goes through a whole ton of progressions, and he definitely makes some questionable decisions at times, especially playing against better competition. But yeah, again, under pressure is something that he kind of struggles with. He had a decent O-line at Indiana, but it really kind of fell apart in that Ohio State game. And if you move over to the pocket / rushing section, it really shows just like he's kind of a statue in the pocket at 6'5". Normally they're not too mobile, and he is one of those that is not mobile. He can run a little bit, but he is not an improviser. He just doesn't scramble all that often. And if you watch the Ohio State game, they get in plenty of times with the blitz, and he just has no idea what to do, just completely kind of just shuts down, and it really killed Indiana in that game when they took so many sacks. He has pretty good footwork, but again, the pocket awareness, he just doesn't, he's not great versus the blitz when it gets in. His pocket presence is pretty good. I didn't really see him bail from too many clean pockets. He can stand in there and make throws, but yeah, as you can see under combine testing, obviously the combine hasn't happened yet, but athletic rating, I give him a C-. He can move, so that's why it's not lower, but he just doesn't really all that often, and he's not an Anthony Richardson, let's just say that. But yeah, Curtis Rourke, he has a decent floor, not a real high ceiling in my opinion at all. He might be a decent NFL backup, but I'm not really too sure about it. But anyways, that's just my honorable mention, Curtis Rourke out of Indiana. So let's get into our number 10 quarterback, which is going to be Quinn Ewers out of Texas. Man, just the most frustrating quarterback to watch in this draft class, easily. He has all the traits. He was a 5-star prospect for a reason. I'm pretty sure he was the number 1 prospect in his class, initially committed to Ohio State. and then transferred to Texas, has been a 2-year starter at Texas. No, 3-year starter at Texas. Like, the traits are there. Like, he's got pretty good size. He's 6'2", 210. He's got good arm strength. He's probably got the second best arm strength in this class, I'd say, behind Cam Ward. I really like Cam Ward's arm strength. But second highest arm strength in the class, probably. He's got some pretty... He can actually sidearm it a little bit. His release is pretty good off... Like, when he's off balance and on the run, he can throw pretty good. Accuracy, short, he's pretty good. And then medium and deep is kind of average. He does have a few errant throws every once in a while, but it's not horrible. Under pressure, though, is really when his accuracy kind of suffers. And especially his processing is just not really great. There's tons of questionable decisions. And there's just sometimes he just gets locked onto a read. He's really one read and run sometimes, and even then he's not a great athlete, so he doesn't really run that well. He just doesn't really get through all his progressions. I feel like he predetermines a lot of throws and just kind of forces it a lot. And then under pressure, he's not very good as well. Pocket presence, really not great. I don't like his pocket presence, and especially not his pocket awareness. And his footwork is just abysmal. I mean, happy feet all over the place. I feel like he's just not lining his feet up to his target a lot, and that kind of causes a lot of the accuracy issues, I feel like, which he doesn't have a lot of, but again, he does have errant throws. And then improvisation and scrambling, definitely not his strong suit. Not a great athlete, but he can make some stuff happen. It's just I would not count on it, especially with his pocket presence and awareness. He can run a little bit. He had a little nice scramble in the Texas A&M game, but other than that, he will not run too often. And obviously, he has not completed a full year of college football starting, so injury concerns are definitely there. I don't think they're super severe because he's never gotten a really bad injury, except for maybe his sophomore year. But he just can't stay on the field for a full season, and maybe that plays into him not developing as much as a player. But yeah, it's definitely not good. Mild injury concerns for Quinn Ewers. No character concerns. I compare him to Carson Wentz, somebody who also doesn't have great footwork or consistent footwork. Definitely has errant throws, but also has pretty good arm strength and traits and size. But again, decision making for Carson Wentz has always been an issue in processing. So I compare him to Carson Wentz, somebody who can come in and be an all right backup, and will always be thought of what if they just developed and were more. Because I feel like Quinn Ewers could be more. Like there's a small chance that Quinn Ewers can come out and be a starting cornerback for an NFL team, because he has the traits, but he doesn't have the mind, and he doesn't really have the body for it. But Quinn Ewers, really frustrating to watch. Should have been super good, just never clicked. So we're going to move on to our number 9 quarterback, which is going to be Dillon Gabriel out of Oregon. Dillon Gabriel, a pretty old prospect, 24 as well, pretty short, 6 foot 200. We'll see what he actually gets measured in at the combine as well. Dillon Gabriel, by way of UCF and Oklahoma to Oregon this past year. 1-year starter at Oregon. The big thing that holds Dillon Gabriel back is just going to be the traits. He's a short guy and he has a pretty weak arm. So again, just the traits are just going to really hold him back. Overall, he's actually like not a bad quarterback in terms of a lot of things. It's just that the size, the arm strength really just drag him down because his ceiling is just not really there. But he has a pretty good floor. His release is pretty quick. I probably should have bumped his release up to at least a B+, but arm talent on the run as well is just not great. He can't really get it all that far. But accuracy, he is a very accurate passer. Short accuracy is near perfect. He will rarely ever miss a pass short. Medium accuracy, I've seen him spray a little bit of passes there. And deep accuracy, he can actually hit the deep ball pretty well, even with his weaker arm. If he gets rid of it early enough, it's pretty much always in stride. On the run, again, he doesn't really get it too far, but he's pretty accurate on the run. Under pressure, he can hit some throws. But accuracy overall is pretty good. But decision making, pretty good. Obviously going from Bo Nix to Dillon Gabriel, just the Dan Lanning offense really makes it easy on these quarterbacks. Apparently, he's pretty good at making decisions. He rarely ever made mistakes, such as Bo Nix did the year before. So he takes pretty good care of the football. But progressions, he's kind of a one-read guy. It was the same thing with Bo Nix last year. He kind of just got stuck on his first read every once in a while and rarely ever got through all his progressions, at least from what I saw. Under pressure decision making, pretty good. But defensive processing, not all that great. You feel like he just sticks on one read, and sometimes he forces it. Sometimes he'll get off of it. But I feel like sometimes he was kind of one read and run. But overall, pocket presence and awareness is actually pretty good for Dillon Gabriel. I like it a lot. I also like his footwork. He's a very technically sound quarterback in terms of the pocket and all that. Improvisation and scrambling. He can scramble a little bit. I wouldn't bet on it being his main trump card in the NFL because he's playing college. He's going to look faster against college talent. But against NFL talent, he's not the greatest runner in the world. I gave him a C+ on the athletic rating. I feel like at 6', 200, normally you expect these quarterbacks to be able to run really fast, and he doesn't really run really fast. He's kind of like more Bryce Young speed, so he can definitely take off, but it's not really going to be a main thing for him. But yeah, so no injury concerns or character concerns, at least from what I saw. But I compared him to Sam Ehlinger. As a Colts fan, I know Sam Ehlinger pretty well. Another short guy who can run, doesn't have a really great arm, but doesn't always make terrible decisions. I think Dillon Gabriel will be a very similar caliber player. I project Dillon Gabriel to be kind of like a journeyman backup. Never going to be a staple somewhere as a backup, but I think he can go team to team and give them some solid presence there as a backup quarterback who can come in and not throw the game away, but probably won't lead you to victory all too often due to his restrictive traits. So Dillon Gabriel, definitely a sound quarterback, but the traits really aren't there, and the upside for me is not there. So he lands at QB9. Now at QB8, I'm going to have Riley Leonard out of Notre Dame. And I am honestly pretty surprised. I probably came in to this as a Notre Dame fan, mind you, probably thinking that Riley Leonard was not going to be in my top 10 quarterbacks. Just passively watching, you really didn't think he was very good. But diving deeper into the film, I think there's a decent floor with Riley Leonard. Arm strength is not all that great. It's solid, but I wouldn't say he has some great arm. His arm angles, he can sidearm it a little bit. I've seen him get it around the rush a few times. Overall, he's talking about the height and weight as well. 6'4", 215, very good prototypical NFL size. Accuracy, if you've watched any bit of Riley Leonard, you will know the guy loves 10 yards and under. He will rarely ever miss a pass underneath 10 yards. Medium accuracy, kind of past that 10 yards. He's pretty good. He can have some errant throws. I know he had a big errant throw versus Penn State in the medium kind of area of the field, but overall he's still pretty accurate there. It really drops off in the deep accuracy. He's hit a few deep balls. That's why his deep accuracy is not too low. He also didn't throw a whole lot of deep balls, but he's a little inconsistent, but he definitely throws a pretty ball whenever it's on target. It's not always on target. And then under pressure accuracy is where he kind of suffers a little bit. Under pressure is not his strong suit. Overall decision making, it's pretty good. Like, again, he doesn't really throw downfield all that often, but I mean, he doesn't really make any bad decisions for the most part. There was a big one in the Penn State game as well, where he kind of made a really bad decision and ended up an interception. Doesn't matter, we won anyways, so yeah. But progressions, he's also like the few quarterbacks before him, also kind of one read and run kind of quarterback. So he can go through progressions occasionally, but it's not something he does super often. He often gets stuck on one read, and then under pressure decision making as well. Just not great when the pressure is in his face. He can sometimes spray passes and force some balls into not great situations for his receivers. So overall processing, C+. Will make good decisions, but is not an overall elite processor of the defense. In terms of the pocket awareness, rushing, pocket presence and awareness is not great. He definitely bails from clean pockets more than you would want him to. His awareness is pretty decent. He knows where the rush is coming from most of the time, but again, awareness, the presence, not always where you want it to be. I will say this about Riley Leonard, though. His footwork is outstanding. He always has a great base to throw off of, always has his feet lined up towards his target. It's really just great footwork from Riley Leonard. Really, really impressed in that area of his game. Improvisation-wise, he's not some great improviser who's going to make everything happen behind the line of scrimmage. In terms of his real big trump card, though, it's his scrambling. When it's not there, he will take off, and he can run at 6'4", 215. He is a very, very good athlete. I give him an A- as the athletic rating. He's not super fast, but he can make guys miss. He's strong, and he can run over people. Like, he can carry a defense with him when the O-line's pushing him. You saw it plenty of times throughout Notre Dame's playoff run. But yeah, he has a very solid floor with his rushing ability, his footwork, and his decent decision-making and accuracy underneath. Injury concerns mild. He had some injuries at Duke that kind of held him back, and as Notre Dame fans, we were cringing every time he got hit. It seemed like he was going to go down, but he never did. He is a tough player, and he just keeps going. No matter how many times Notre Dame called his number, he kept running that football. So yeah, no character concerns. I compare him to Josh Johnson, a kind of journeyman NFL backup who didn't have a great arm, but his main ability to be a high floor backup is his scrambling ability. Won't give you anything super special as a backup, but I think he can come into games, and with his rushing ability, he can kind of get you some first downs, keep you going. Probably won't lead you to any big wins, but I mean, who knows? I mean, for what it's worth, I know you could say Notre Dame relied on their defense and run game, but overall in the playoffs, their run game was not really hitting, besides Riley Leonard. So it's kind of impressive for him to take a team with no receivers to almost winning the national championship. I know, again, a lot of that was built off their defense, but he still led them back in that game, and they almost won if it weren't for a terrible defensive play call. Anyways, there's something to be said for that, for Riley Leonard. I do think there is a chance that he just is out of the league in a year or two, and there's definitely that, because sometimes you wonder just like what is going on with the accuracy downfield, and sometimes you wonder, it's like, what are you looking at? The main issue is just he only throws short. He really only throws short, and he's kind of one read and run. But I think the rushing ability gives him a good floor as a player, and I think his accuracy underneath is great. Good arm talent, and makes pretty good decisions, just not an elite processor, and downfield accuracy has some questions. So now moving on, our next three quarterbacks are all actually going to be tied. They're going to have the same grade. So quarterbacks 5 through 7. We're going to start off, though, with Kyle McCord out of Syracuse. Gotta say, did not expect this good of a Kyle McCord showing this season after the kind of disaster that was Ohio State's 2023 season with Kyle McCord at the helm. Obviously the team was great. Kyle McCord really did hold it back, though, if you really watched the games. But he came into Syracuse and he really refined his game. He looked like a completely new player almost. 6'3", 220, good size, 22 years old. Pretty good arm strength. I didn't think he had a cannon on him or anything, but his arm strength was definitely solid, good enough. Accuracy, he's pretty accurate at all levels of the field. Short accuracy especially. He will have occasional errant passes, but again, pretty solid all over the field. Decision making is where it kind of comes into question. He's kind of a pretty much just go gunslinger mentality. Like, he will throw whatever if he thinks he can get it there. So I'll talk about that more later with my pro comparison. But progressions, he's kind of, again, he can get stuck on his one read. That's like all the quarterbacks we've talked about so far. And then under pressure, he struggles a little bit, mostly because he's not the greatest athlete. Getting into that next. Pocket presence and awareness is pretty good all around. Footwork is also very solid. Improvisation and scrambling, not his best attribute. He's not a great athlete. He can definitely get out there, scramble a little bit, pick up some yards, but in the NFL, he's going to be severely limited as a runner, and he's not some great improviser behind. He's improvised on a few plays, but it's not something he does consistently to a high level. But yeah, I mean, Kyle McCord really came out and he was gunning for it. I mean, this season he was looking to prove everyone wrong after the disaster was Ohio State. They ran him out of town, went to Syracuse, and he ended up having a really, really good year. They beat Miami at the end of the year, which was really cool, and he just slings it. I mean, he does not care. He's really exciting to watch, but gotta have the processing come along a little bit better in the NFL. I do think he can be a very solid backup. He's got very solid size, arm strength, accuracy, pocket presence, footwork, all that. Just kind of limited as a player in terms of rushing and improvisation. C plus athletic grade. And then my pro comparison, Ryan Fitzpatrick, I think fits well. Ryan Fitzpatrick was a very good backup for a long time, even a fringe starter at some points where he looked like he was going to be a good starter, but he would always revert back to, well, Ryan Fitzpatrick. But again, he's similar to Kyle McCord, and they're both gunslingers. They both have pretty good arms. They both can run, but it's not really something that they like to do. They're both mobile, but won't improvise a whole lot, and always have questionable decision makings. But again, they're gunslingers. It's what they do. So I really like the Ryan Fitzpatrick comparison to Kyle McCord. I think he could be a really, really solid backup at the NFL level. Can make some plays for you, but will also maybe have a few questionable decisions there where he's trying to force it. But yeah, Kyle McCord, very good backup potential. Maybe possible starter like Ryan Fitzpatrick, but we'll see. Next up, Jackson Dart, tied as well, obviously, with Kyle McCord. So Jackson Dart, very, very hyped up recently in the draft community. I've seen him go in mock drafts in the first round. Even Steelers are a popular spot for him. I am not even close to first round hype on Jackson Dart. He's got a pretty good arm. I'd probably bump his arm strength up to B+, but it didn't really wow me on tape. But I mean, Jackson Dart's 21 years old at draft time as well. That's what the age means, is on draft day he will be 21 years old. He's 225, 6'2", so he's got pretty good size. And underneath, he has some pretty good accuracy. The deep ball is... The deep ball is a little bit where you see a little bit of accuracy struggles, but occasionally he will hit some very good deep balls. It was a big part of Ole Miss's offense, so he had a lot of attempts to hit the deep ball. It wasn't always super consistent though, but underneath he was pretty consistent with the accuracy. Under pressure, he kind of struggled a little bit. I'll get to that a little later with the decision-making processing. Decision-making was all right. Processing, he definitely had a few questionable decisions on tape. Progressions, just like everyone else, really just he got stuck on his first read, I feel like, a lot of times. When the first read is open, he can hit it just as well as anyone in this class, and I think that's where a lot of the hype is coming from. When things are perfect around Jackson Dart, he is a very good quarterback, but the thing is, when things are not perfect around him, that's when you see him struggle a little bit, especially under pressure. Decision making, not my favorite. He can make some really questionable decisions at times, and I really don't like the pocket presence for Jackson Dart. Whenever the rush gets in, he just drops his head way too fast. I think he looks to run as soon as he knows his first read isn't open, and he senses even the slightest bit of pressure, and he doesn't always go to the right place in the pocket. That's why I only have his pocket awareness as a B-. Footwork is pretty solid. It's not too janky. Pretty solid in terms of footwork. Improvisation, he can make plays happen. He can scramble around. He's not a super athletic player, but only a B athletic grade, but he can run probably a little better than Kyle McCord and some of the other quarterbacks, but he does improvise a little better than someone like Kyle McCord. But I think Kyle McCord has a little better decision making, and I think McCord also has better pocket presence and awareness. But yeah, Jackson Dart, a lot of hype. Don't really see it. I think he can be a good quarterback if everything's perfect around them. The thing with the NFL is things are rarely perfect, and I think he needs to develop his processing a little more, become less one read stuck, and yeah, Jackson Dart potential is there, just needs to develop a lot. I compare him to Drew Lock, somebody who at one time people thought would be a starter. Unfortunately, he just kind of never developed, and he got worse and worse after that one good season with Denver. But Drew Lock always had pretty good arm strength, always had pretty good size, always could run a little bit when it was there, just really struggled with processing, and the accuracy was not always amazing. I think Jackson Dart is going to have better accuracy than Drew Lock, but similar players, that's why I compare him to Drew Lock. Could be a good replacement starter whenever, and I could see him developing into a starter one day. He's got the traits. It's just he's so far away in terms of a lot of things, and so that's why I only have him as a 3 to 4. And next up, the last quarterback in this little tier of 5 through 7 is going to be Tyler Shough. Tyler Shough really came out of nowhere during the draft cycle. Everyone was getting through the quarterbacks, talking about Jackson Dart, and then people were getting to Tyler Shough, and they're like, why is this guy not getting any hype? 25 years old, very old prospect, but 6'5", 225, super good size. Also, I just want to point out, injury concerns says none. That is a complete and total lie. I forgot to change that. He has very big injury concerns. That's why he's 25 years old and still in college. He kept getting hurt, kept getting some medical red shirts, and that's why he's such an old college player. So there are definitely very, very big injury concerns with Tyler Shough. So just ignore that it says none. That is a complete lie. My bad. Forgot to change that. But starting off with the arm strength, he has a good arm. He is a very, very solid NFL arm. He is not like Curtis Work, who is 6'5" and similar size, but just doesn't have the arm strength. He has the arm strength, and he has arm talent. I mean, he can throw on the run off balance. He has a pretty good release. He has plenty of different arm angles to throw from. Just overall, very good arm talent from Shough. I don't think he has a super cannon of an arm. I didn't really see super big zip on his passes, or I didn't see him chuck 60, 70 yard bombs, but he can definitely sling it. Accuracy underneath will rarely miss anything. Deep accuracy as well is pretty good. Medium, he can kind of spray some passes there. Not always the most consistent, but overall is pretty solid. On the run, he can get rid of it as well. Very solid there. Under pressure is pretty accurate. A little flustered if he's under pressure. His accuracy can get away from it a little bit. But so the big thing with Tyler Shough, he is a super fun player to watch because he's really unpredictable. If you look at my pro comparison, his decision making is not always the greatest. Like overall, when he's in rhythm, his decision making is really good. For the most part, he has a few plays where he forces the ball downfield to a player he predetermined. There's some plays where he forces the ball, and his processing is not always there. His progressions, he can sometimes get locked on to one read, but overall, he's better than most of the quarterbacks we've talked about at getting through his progressions. The issue comes with his under pressure decision making. He has some Jameis Winston in him. I mean, if if the pressure's there and he is not able to escape it, he will run to his back foot and just chuck it up to the nearest receiver. And for the most part, it didn't hurt him. Like, he completed passes while doing it. It's just the NFL is a different game, and if you just chuck it up, throw it out there in the flat off your back foot because you know nothing else is there, it's gonna not end up as great as it did in college. I mean, it's fun to watch. It's like Jameis Winston. It is a roller coaster. I mean, he'll get pressure in his face and he'll just chuck it off his back foot to the check down, and you are praying to Jesus that there is no defender right in the way. But yeah, really fun player in terms of processing, needs to come a long way and to be more consistent in the NFL. The pocket presence, I definitely saw him bail from a few pockets, and his awareness as well, not always great. I mean, like I said, when he throws those fadeaways to his flat or whatever, it's often because he just didn't see the rush coming, and the rush gets to him super fast, and he doesn't know what to do, so he just flings it out. He could stand in the pocket a little more. He could sense the rush a little bit better. Definitely, for sure, that's something he can improve on. His footwork is overall pretty good. Sometimes gets a little sloppy, but for the most part, he has a good, solid base. Improvisation, he can scramble around. He can move. He's, for a 6'5" quarterback, he's pretty good. He doesn't scramble a whole lot. He likes to make throws while on the move. He doesn't like to take off too much. He's not super fast, but for someone who's 6'5", you definitely really appreciate the speed. It's definitely better than someone like Curtis Rourke. But yeah, he can improvise a little bit. He can get a little shaky back there and make some defenders miss. But it's not something he's super good at. Obviously, 6'5", gonna be a little hard to move around, but he does it as well as you can. B+ athletic rating. And so, pro comparison, Jameis Winston. This is not right now Jameis Winston, but kind of a few years ago Jameis Winston, where he would come in and he'd be overall pretty solid the whole game, and then he'll just make one or two decisions. You're just like, what are you doing? Super fun to watch, but he needs to cut some of that reckless stuff out of his game, or else it's going to end up pretty bad for him. But he has, out of him, Dart, and McCord, I think he has the highest ceiling, especially with his arm talent, size, and athleticism. But I just think that those random decisions kind of hold him back a little bit in terms of things. So Tyler Shough, last of the 5 through 7 range of quarterbacks. Getting to my QB4 is going to be Will Howard out of Ohio State. Just the word to describe Will Howard is just solid. He is solid in all levels of the field. He has a solid arm talent. He can make some pretty big throws. He didn't have this crazy arm or anything, but he can get it pretty far. He has some decent zip. 6'4", 235. He's a big guy. He's built really well. Transfer from Kansas State. 23 years old. Accuracy is probably his worst trait, in my opinion. It's just his accuracy is really kind of all over the place, especially the deep accuracy. He has a high tendency to kind of short some of the passes downfield occasionally. He also has some really big passes downfield, but sometimes I just think he kind of underthrows the balls downfield. That's why his deep accuracy is only a C, and sometimes his underneath accuracy is not all that solid. He can stand to get a little better at that. Decision making is pretty solid. He'll occasionally make some pretty poor decisions, but he, for the most part, makes solid decisions. Progressions, he actually does get through his progressions pretty well. Under pressure decision making, when the rush gets in, he can kind of break down a little bit. It's definitely something he can improve. So processing, B-, pretty solid, but could definitely get better, but is pretty solid at going through his progressions, going through his reads, and all that stuff. Pocket presence, very much to like there. He stands pretty good in the pocket, rarely ever bails from clean pockets. He knows when he has time, pretty good pocket awareness as well. Footwork can be a little sloppy. Occasionally, the footwork's not all there. Improvisation, he's not a big improvising guy. He's not somebody who's going to run around and make all your defenders miss. He's got some pretty good athleticism, B- on scrambling, B athletic rating. He can run, as you probably saw plenty of times. He took off in the playoffs and throughout the season, but in the NFL it's going to be minimized a little bit more. But overall, at 6'4", 235, the way he can run is pretty good. And they even had some design runs for him in the Ohio State offense. Probably not going to have those in the NFL, but he can run. I compare him to Sam Darnold, a similar player who has good arm talent. Darnold probably has better arm talent. Accuracy is somewhat all over the place with Sam Darnold, but this year his accuracy was pretty good until those final games, of course. Again, Sam Darnold decision making is not always great, but is pretty good in terms of this season. Pocket presence for Sam Darnold is okay. I'd say Will Howard has better pocket awareness than Sam Darnold. I mean, you saw the awareness from Sam Darnold show up in those last 2 games of the season. It was not awesome, but Howard, like Sam Darnold, is a pretty good athlete, can run, but it's not going to be his main trump card in the NFL. So I think Howard is going to be a pretty solid NFL backup. I think he won't ever probably turn into a starter, but I think, like Sam Darnold, there's a path to it because he's so solid in most aspects. If he improves his accuracy and has the processing come along, I think he could definitely get a starting role in the NFL. But there's a little ways to go before you get there. He's got to improve some things. So Will Howard, just a solid quarterback. So getting to my QB3 is going to be Jalen Milroe. I know a lot of people who have him way lower just because the floor right now is just not there. But out of all these quarterbacks, besides Cam Ward, he has the highest ceiling. And although it's going to take a lot for him to get there, there is still a ceiling for Jalen Milroe. Like, it's within grasp. It's just you got to stretch out really far to find it. Arm strength is really good. He has a pretty good arm. He releases it pretty fast. But you will see the arm angles, and like when he's off balance and on the run, he has a really strict throwing motion. It's really over the top. He never really, I just don't see him sidearm the ball that often. It's just probably not something he can do. And on the run, his arm talent kind of suffers. It's not really his specialty to throw on the run. But accuracy, just short and underneath, he's not great. He's kind of backwards to most quarterback prospects. He has a great deep ball, but underneath and in the medium areas, his accuracy is definitely not perfect. But on the run, under pressure, his accuracy, again, suffers. So the deep ball is really kind of carrying that accuracy. Overall, it probably shouldn't be a B for the overall accuracy. It should be a C+ or a B-. But the deep ball for Jalen Milroe is still very good, even if it's not helped out by his other accuracies. But processing is where it needs to come a long way. I said in my previous video talking about the quarterback class that I feel like Alabama just didn't really run too many complex concepts. I mean, I feel like Bama was just kind of running a lot of really easy, simple concepts for Milroe. And he ran them pretty well. Like, he went through his progressions kind of well on those plays. But again, it felt like they just kept running mesh over and over every single game, every single drive. And he can read mesh pretty well, but you're going to have to run different things in the NFL. So processing needs to come a long way for Milroe. But pocket presence and awareness, he does bail from clean pockets a lot. Awareness, he does sense where the rush is coming pretty good. He can sidestep a few players, and obviously he can outrun a lot of players, as we'll get to later. Footwork, not great. His stance really kind of impacts his footwork a lot. He just kind of doesn't really get his feet set super quickly to be able to throw super fast as soon as he gets the ball. So definitely needs to improve his footwork, but with good coaching that can be coached up. Improvisation, he doesn't really make too many things happen behind the line of scrimmage. He's kind of just, as soon as he needs to create, he creates to run. And obviously you will see A+ scrambling. He is an incredible athlete. He can run better than any quarterback we've seen in a while. I mean, he might transfer just as full-time running back straight up. I've heard that suggestion a few times. I think if he doesn't work out at quarterback, as you see in my pro comparison, my low comparison is Taysom Hill. I think he could be a Taysom Hill on steroids. I think he'd be a really fun player, and that gives him kind of a floor as to why he's a 3rd round grade, because even if he never succeeds as a quarterback, you have an absolute weapon to use in a Taysom Hill role. He can throw. He has a good arm. So say you put him as a wildcat quarterback who can throw, run. You just give him 1 or 2 reads, so that way he doesn't have to make a super complex read. Obviously, if that never develops. And I mean, you have a weapon there. Obviously, he won't be able to start full-time doing that. He'll just have to be mixed in. But I think he'd be a super good Taysom Hill on steroids. But Justin Fields is my high comp. Justin Fields has always struggled throwing, which is something Miller will probably always struggle, but Fields' legs have always given him a really good floor, and Fields has always had a pretty good deep ball, but he does struggle with the accuracy in the medium and intermediate and short ranges. So Jalen Milroe needs to come a long way, but he has a good floor as just a pure all-around playmaker. But super good athlete, can run super well. It's just the throwing needs to come along a long way, and this is going to be a multi-year project for Jalen Milroe. It's not going to be a sit him 1 year and see what you have. It's going to be sit him near his full rookie contract and then see what you have. But if he does hit, if he does develop, he has the traits. He's 6'2", 220. He has a stellar arm. He has a good deep ball, and obviously the legs are incredible. So yeah, that is Jalen Milroe. Needs to come a long way, but there is potential. Now getting into the top 2 quarterbacks of this class. As you know, you probably know who they are. It's just what order do I have them in, and you probably already know which order they're in. Shedeur Sanders is going to be my quarterback number 2. So Shedeur has been getting a lot of hype. I've seen him as QB1 for a few people, but I think most people agree with me that Cam Ward is QB1. And so Shedeur Sanders, starting off, my big complaint that I had with him in that video I made earlier about the quarterback class, the arm strength really concerns me. It's not a horrible arm. He can get it pretty far downfield, but he has to set up for that throw. It's like I explained it in the video. Someone like Joe Burrow, who doesn't have the best arm talent, who I think has better arm talent than Shedeur Sanders still, his mind is incredible, and that's why he's such a good quarterback, is because of his mind and his playmaking ability. Shedeur has the playmaking ability, but his mind is just not elite like Joe Burrow's was coming out of college. And if you struggle to have an elite mind with a bad arm, again, it's not a bad arm, but it's definitely not a very good arm by NFL standards, probably below average. You're going to struggle a little bit, because you have to be, with a bad arm, you have to be more on time, more precise, throw with more anticipation, and Shedeur just didn't really throw with a whole lot of anticipation at Colorado. But yeah, and off balance, I feel like his arm strength really suffers. He seems to really struggle to get the ball super far downfield when he's on the run and off platform. But anyways, 6'2", 215, pretty decent size. Nothing special, but the size is fine for NFL standards. But his best attribute, of course, is his short and intermediate accuracy. I mean, he is surgical in those levels. Deep accuracy is where I have concerns. The arm strength kind of plays into this. His deep ball just seems a little off every time he throws it, whether it's slightly underthrown, slightly overthrown. He just really can't dial in the deep ball the way he can in short and intermediate ranges. But again, the short and intermediate ranges are really accurate for him. And on the run, again, his accuracy really kind of suffers for me. But under pressure, it's fine. Could be better, but accuracy, definitely the best in this class, for me at least, and especially in the short and intermediate ranges. Decision making, he kind of struggles a little bit. Under pressure, I actually think he does a pretty good job of dealing with the pressure and not forcing passes when the pressure's in his face. but you can go through progressions somewhat quickly. The processing I feel like is pretty overall solid with Shedeur. I don't think he's this elite processor like Joe Burrow, but the processing is fine. I think it does need to improve at the NFL level if he wants to really become a top 20 starter. But this is a pretty good baseline as a quarterback. And then the pocket presence is not amazing. The awareness is also not amazing. Again, he holds the ball for a bit too long. I've seen him bail from clean pockets, and he doesn't always go to the correct spot in the pocket. He sometimes does, but it's not always there. The footwork is kind of Bryce Young-y, like rookie year Bryce Young-y. He kind of, in the short game, it's kind of inconsistent. He'll sometimes have his feet set immediately and will throw on time, but sometimes he'll kind of have happy feet in the short game and then he'll be a little late or he'll miss a read because of that. So the footwork is a little consistent, and I would like to see it get more consistent at the next level. He can improvise. He's not this amazing athlete. B- athletic grade. He's kind of slow, not gonna lie. Like, he's not slow, but he's like 4.8 40 slow. Like, he's not some elite athlete at the quarterback position, but he can make plays happen. He can scramble around, and he can scramble, but it's not going to be super good, especially with the better athletes in the NFL. It's gonna take a little step back. So yeah, character concerns is mild as well. They're not huge concerns for me, but obviously there were a few times in the offseason he called out his offensive line, and it's not really a good look. And obviously, being Deion Sanders' kid is going to come a lot of media, so we'll see how he handles it. I'm not super concerned with his character, but there are some slight concerns, so I put it as mild, but it shouldn't be a big issue. I compare him to Teddy Bridgewater. This is not the Teddy Bridgewater of now, which is coaching a high school team. It is Teddy Bridgewater of old. Saints Teddy Bridgewater, Vikings Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy Bridgewater never had a great arm, but he always was solid. Like, he was pretty accurate. He was a decent NFL starter with the Vikings before he got hurt. And I think that's Shedeur Sanders. He'll probably be a pretty decent starter maybe for a few years. It'll probably take some acclimating for him to the NFL level from the college level, but obviously maybe his pitiful offensive line would help him get used to the game speed more quickly in the NFL. But yeah, so Shedeur Sanders, I struggle to really think that he is a top quarterback prospect. I have him as a second round grade. I personally am not taking Shedeur Sanders in the first round. Like, if I am a team that needs a quarterback, I'm sorry, I can't take him in the first round. If I am taking him, I'm taking him in the back. If I'm the Steelers, I'm taking him. If I'm like someone in the back, like maybe the Rams even, who needs a quarterback but can't really get up to select one really high, he's probably going to go at 3 to the Giants for Shedeur. I really struggle to think that he's going to be the face of the New York Giants for future seasons, but I could always be proven wrong. He could always develop his processing a bit more, the deep ball a bit more, and yeah, there's a solid floor for Shedeur. It's just the ceiling for me really is not there to warrant taking him with a first round pick. I think he'll be a decent starter, high-end backup, but he definitely has some starter potential, great accuracy, pretty good processing, and he can improvise, he can run, but it's just, again, the ceiling, the arm strength really concerns me, so I would not take Shedeur in the first round. But to my QB1, on a different note, Cam Ward. I love Cam Ward. I don't think he's as good as probably the top 4 quarterbacks I had in my last year's class, which was, obviously I wasn't making videos then, which was Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and Bo Nix. I don't think he's as good as those guys, but I do think he is a better prospect than Penix and McCarthy. 22 years old, 6'2", 223. He's a hefty guy. Not super tall, but 6'2", good enough size. I think his arm strength is really good. I think he has a ton of zip on his throws. He can get the ball out fast, and his arm angles, he his base throwing motion is kind of sidearmy, but he can really get the ball around defenders, linemen, just at will. And off balance, his arm strength kind of struggles, but he can still get it pretty far downfield. Accuracy overall for Cam Ward is pretty good. I don't think it's as good as short and intermediate ranges as it is for Shedeur, but I do think he has a better deep ball than Shedeur Sanders. He could throw on the run and under pressure pretty accurately. So accuracy, while having the same grade as Shedeur Sanders, I think Shedeur has a better floor as an accurate passer, but Cam Ward is definitely accurate to all three levels of the field, just not to the extent of Shedeur Sanders. The reason why Cam Ward is not a true first round grade for me is decision making, and his processing still needs to come a long way. He makes a lot of questionable decisions. Obviously, he's a gunslinger. He will take risks, but sometimes you just look and you're just like, why? Why are you throwing that? Processing needs to come a little bit of ways. Progressions, he's pretty good in terms of progressions. Under pressure, he kind of makes some bad decisions. So, yeah, the processing still needs to come a long way for Cam Ward, but the traits are going to help out a lot while he progresses his processing. And I just feel like sometimes it didn't feel like he was seeing the defense super well, and he was kind of going through his progressions a little slow, but he did go through his progressions a lot. So yeah, he was always searching for receivers, but I feel like it wasn't to the extent of someone like Caleb Williams from last year was. Caleb Williams, if you watch his USC film, he is always scanning for open receivers super quickly, and he rarely was ever felt stuck. I feel like Cam Ward can get stuck on his reads a few times, but overall, decision making is really what he needs to improve. Like, don't cut all the risks out like Caleb Williams did in his rookie year, but just take better risks. Just stop being a little reckless with the ball. He cut out a lot of that from his Washington State tape, but still needs to come a little bit of ways. Pocket presence and awareness is overall pretty good. I like his footwork. He really has a solid base most of the time. Sometimes when you get pressure, the footwork can kind of break down, but improvisation is his specialty. He can run around in the backfield for days, tire out your defense, make throws on the run while being chased. He can scramble, he can run. A- athletic grade. He's pretty fast, 6'2", 223, and he's probably going to run a 4.5 40. I don't think he'll ever get into the 4.4s. Maybe he'll run a 4.6. He's pretty fast. He breaks tackles as well when scrambling. He can run through guys. He's big. He's 223. He's well built for his size, and he can run through guys. Not as much as in the NFL level, but definitely has that in his bag. I compare him to Jordan Love. Jordan Love, probably not the runner that Cam Ward is, but Jordan Love, obviously super consistent, still needs to develop the decision making for Jordan Love, but Jordan Love has showed he can be a super high level NFL quarterback at times. It's just sometimes he's just not always there. And I do think Cam Ward has a better floor in terms of accuracy than Jordan Love as well. But yeah, Cam Ward, I really love. I think he's going to be a very good starter. I don't know if I think he's going to be a very good starter. I think he has the potential to be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL with his great traits, great athleticism. I have him as a 1-2. Initially, I had him as a 9.0, which would have been a first round grade. I dropped it down a little bit just because the film didn't really seem true first round quarterback to me. The decision making really played into that a lot. But Cam Ward, I wouldn't take him number one. If I were the Titans, I would go Travis Hunter. I just don't think he's a number one caliber quarterback. But if I'm the Giants at 3, I'm probably pulling the trigger, especially with my job on the line like Brian Daboll's is. Yeah, Cam Ward, super fun player. I cannot wait to see him in the NFL. It's just, I really hope he develops better decision making and gets good coaching to use his talents to the best, because he is a really fun player, and I hope he hits. I really do. Round 1 to 2 grade for him. Initially had a round 1 grade, dropped it down a little bit, but that is it for my top 10 quarterbacks in this year's NFL draft class. Here are the final rankings. Obviously, remember 5, 6, and 7 are interchangeable. I guess we can just go through down the list. 10 was Quinn Ewers, 9 was Dylan Gabriel, 8 was Riley Leonard, 7 slash tied for 5th was Kyle McCord, 6 slash tied for 5 was Jackson Dart, and tied for 5 was Tyler Shough, and 4 was Will Howard, 3 is Jalen Milroe, 2 is Shedeur Sanders, and 1 is Cam Ward out of Miami. Overall, not nearly the high-end talent that last year's class had, but I do think it's better in terms of the mid-rounds, in terms of potential backups and sleepers. A lot of people also share this opinion, and I think there's a lot of potential really good backups in this class, and I think that the only one I can really see being a high-end starter someday is Cam Ward, and the 1 in a million chance Jalen Milroe hits. But yeah, that's going to be the video, everybody. Thank you all for watching. Be sure to tune in for my next position ranking, which should be coming out after the Combine. I'm going to have mock drafts and stuff and prospect videos as well coming out soon. So like and subscribe for that. And thank you all for watching, and see you next time.